So my name is Stephen Wood, and I'm a sophomore at Hofstra University, and I study film, and on the side I play D&D as a dungeon master. So I first heard about D&D when my friend brought it up to me about my sophomore year of high school, and I didn't know much about it, so he just asked if I wanted to play, and I said sure. D&D works off of a difficulty challenge system where you roll a dice to try and exceed a certain number. For example, the main one you'll roll is a d20, and a lot of things you have to roll for are around like 15, so you'd roll the dice and try to get above a 15 for something to work, like an attack or a skill check of some kind. So what really got me into the game was when I actually was the dungeon master for the first time, and I kind of took the reins of the story and was able to make a game for my friends, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So I became my DM off my second game when my friend ran the first one, and then I decided to try and run the second, and I kind of just grew from there. It wasn't terribly difficult, it just took a bit of reading and a little bit of research and some free time spent in learning the game itself, the mechanics, and then fun things you can do with those mechanics. One of my favorite stories as a DM was when my players were coming across a base that they didn't know much about. In this world, one of my characters had the ability to detect the monsters of the realm. And when they landed, they realized that there were monsters all around them. You could detect it like a sonar. However, when they looked outside, they were just normal people. And the encounter was all about them trying to figure out what was going on in a desperate attempt to stay alive, and they were surrounded on all sides. It was quite interesting. The encounters that I ran was partially horror-based, and that's something I like to do a lot as a DM, is to try and make the characters just a little bit scared. And we started off with setting them in a pretty desolate area, and they were investigating a town with bodies on the ground. And upon the little bit of investigation, they found that each corpse had not decayed once, despite being hundreds of years old, and when they opened them up, they found black blood inside. So that was their first bit of disturbance, with a bit of dramatic music playing in the background just to start raising the tension, until they continued through the town and find that some of the bodies were missing pieces, like something had ripped the arm off or a leg and had taken it back to a building. And as they checked the ground, they found footprints, handprints, like a spider, but with all human and leg hands going in different directions in every way that was unnatural, until they find a trail of blood leading back to a single building. And that's when a bit of tension came, and they're like, all right, so how do we approach this? And that's a huge part of D&D. It's letting the players try and figure out how to overcome circumstances on their own. It doesn't always have to be as simple as I'm going to run in with a sword and hit something. So for this one, they actually decided to take one of the bodies and cut off an arm before throwing it at the door of this building. And then eventually, a pale white hand reached out, grabbed the hand, and pulled it back in. And that's when they knew that they were in a combat scenario right there. So they decided to make up a quick little plan, going under rooftops and getting vantage points for the creature because they didn't know what it could do and how they could fight it. So they decided to make the best plan they could, and other circumstances leaded up to a very intense close combat area in the tunnels beneath the village that the spider had made earlier. And it was a fight for their life, and they enjoyed every second of it. Alright, so as a new player, the only things you really need are the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, and that will have every rule, all of the main classes, and every detail you need to start with the game. And the only other thing you need is friends and a willingness to have fun, because that's what it's all about. There's no competition, it's a purely team-based thing where you can get along well with your friends, and that's my favorite part about it.